I can't believe that it's already been a year since Breath of the Wild's The Champions Ballad DLC release for the Switch. I still remember the night that it was revealed at the Game Awards, with that epic stage presentation leading into a brand new trailer that at the end announced that this DLC was releasing the next day. It took me a total of 8 hours to get through the Champions Ballad from start to end, and although I did enjoy it a ton, its completion also left me somewhat heartbroken, because Breath of the Wild, a game that has been hyped up for ever since 2014, has now been put to an end after the release and completion of its final DLC pack. Considering that this game was, and still is, my favorite game of all time, it was sad to see that this game has finally ran its course, after the hundreds of hours I've spent finding all the memories, completing all the shrines, and exploring the grand and diverse world of Hyrule. So today, I've decided to flash back to a year ago and take another look at the Champions Ballad DLC to see if it truly was a deserving send-off for such an incredible game like Breath of the Wild. Although there were a lot of great elements to this DLC pack, there are some things that are still worth criticizing that I hope Nintendo will take into consideration when developing any future Zelda games or DLC alike. With that said, let's go back and take a deep look at the Champions Ballad. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what this DLC is about, let me provide a quick recap for you. Under the Sheikah monk named Maz Koshia, Link must relive the trials based off of the 4 champions along with trials of his own in order to obtain the ability to pilot his own personal divine beast. Throughout these trials, he will have several run-ins with the traveling musician, Cass, who will teach the player verses of a song called the Champions Ballad, which help the player foreshadow and overcome the challenges that await. This DLC is broken into 3 main parts: the first trial, which takes place in the Great Plateau, the Champions Trials, which take place near the 4 completed Divine Beasts, and the final trial, which takes place in a Divine Beast hidden underneath the ground. So I figured that I should analyze this DLC piece by piece, starting with the first trial. Back on the Great Plateau, Link's first task is to complete 4 new shrines that await him, each one guarded by a camp of enemies that he must clear out first. However, for this challenge, Link has been given a unique weapon called the One-Hit Obliterator, turning himself into a glass cannon of sorts. Although this weapon can be used to obliterate anything in just one hit, ironically, anything that hits Link will kill him instantly as well. This weapon cannot be unequipped or swapped out at any time, so he must play with these unique parameters throughout the whole beginning trial, and honestly, these parameters made for some of the most thought-provoking and unique encounters in the entire game. As fun as it is to just run into one of the enemy camps and start hacking down some of the toughest enemies in one hit, there will always be that one stray Keese or archer willing to end your day with a single, unexpected blow. This clever twist in the normal combat system forces the player to rethink their combat strategies to try out new tactics that the player might not have considered before. I know that I was thrown off guard by this when I first played, because after getting far enough into the base game, I had so many heart containers and great pieces of armor to the point that I didn't have to worry about pathetic blows from low tier enemies anymore. So playing this part of the DLC was sort of a wake-up call to most players, that led to some of the most intense and vulnerable battles I have ever played in this game. But the fun didn't end there though, as these one-hit kill parameters were also very well integrated within the section's 4 shrines. Although the shrines in the base game were more revolved around puzzles and sometimes combat, the shrines for this challenge specifically took advantage of the one-hit kill mechanic, by offering shrines that played out more like obstacle courses than anything. My favorite example of this is a Stop to Start shrine, which is probably my favorite one on the whole plateau. In this shrine, the player must work their way through multiple rooms of spiked hazards without getting hit once in order to get to their goal. A shrine like this just wouldn't have worked in the base game, because most of these obstacles would have only taken a heart or so of damage away at a time, eliminating the very challenge that it boasts in its current state. Another great shrine that takes advantage of this section's key mechanic is the Major Test of Strength Plus, which at first just seems to be another copy and paste of the combat shrines from the base game, but instead opens up to be something a lot bigger. Throughout the shrine, you will be taking down high-level Guardian Scouts with ease, while exploring through these dimly lit corridors, only to be jumped by a room full of these things at the very end. So throughout these 2 shrines and the others, it was nice to see that the challenges of this plateau were all heavily reflecting of its key mechanic. For those reasons, not only was this segment one of my favorite bits about the whole DLC, but it was also one of my favorites in the entire game. After the beginning trials are completed, the One-Hit Obliterator shatters into pieces, revealing the next chapter of the DLC, the Champions Trials. This segment is split into 4 separate quest lines, one for each of the champions, that involve the player to solve 3 different micro-challenges, 3 corresponding shrines, and a revisit of that region's Blight Cannon to top each section off. Now, although this chapter of the DLC had a lot of fun moments, this section is also where some of the worst parts shine through. For starters, I do have to give major props to the shrines in this section, as we get to visit a grand total of 12 new ones, which are definitely some of the best and creative ones I have played. And most of the micro challenges the player must complete are also quite fun as well, such as the snowboard time trial through Hebra and the epic fight against the Magneto Talus Titan. But the main flaw about this section of the DLC is that it lacks cohesion. You see, there is no real storyline behind most of the things you do in these 4 quest lines, as it is mainly just a matter of go here, do this, and rinse and repeat 11 more times. This also creates a lot of repetition, considering that this section of the DLC can take anywhere from 4 to 6 hours long, depending on the skill of the player. But considering that most of the tasks you do in this section are quite standalone fun, the lack of cohesion and repetitive nature didn't honestly impact me too much, but I just wish that most of these events would have been better unified with some rhyme or reason. But after completing the 3 shrines of a particular area, your final trial consists of a revisit with that area's Blight Cannon, but this time with specific parameters. Instead of just using your normal arsenal of items, you are only given specific weapons and clothing to take the beast down. I know that these fights got a lot of criticism for just reusing the bosses in the base game, and although I do acknowledge that fact, I still think that these special parameters made these fights feel even better and more thematically appropriate than the ones done in the base game. But anyways, I would say that my favorite things about this section of the DLC are the rewards you get for completing each area's boss revisit, a brand new memory corresponding to that region's champion. These cutscenes were among some of the most entertaining in the entire game, as they gave us fun new insights on these beloved characters. Considering that they didn't see a whole lot of screen time in the base game, I was really able to appreciate these moments, and I'm glad that their character arcs got expanded upon even further by finding their diaries in this section of the DLC, which offered a different perspective to these characters that we have yet to see elsewhere. This chapter of the DLC is also where we learn about the song, the Champions Ballad, which is used by cast to teach a player the locations of the very challenges found within the segment. It's a very clever and catchy tune that gets built upon every time you encounter this character in the DLC. The more you learn about the champions and their backstory throughout the questline, the more cast knows about the Champions Ballad song, which I thought was a really neat touch that helped tie together the events of this chapter in the ballad. After getting through all 4 of the Champions trials, Link only has one final trial left to complete, a hidden divine beast that can be accessed through the Shrine of Resurrection. This beast has a perpetually rotating axle that moves many of its corresponding gears in either a clockwise or counterclockwise manner. Not only must the player use this constant motion as a way of getting around the beast, but also must find ways to translate this power into the rooms outside of the main chamber, where the 4 terminals are kept. This relation between the beast's rotation and how it must get channeled throughout the dungeon is definitely what made it one of my favorites in the entire game, as it sparked so many great challenges and puzzling moments that were extremely satisfying to overcome. After the 4 terminals are checked, the beast opens up to reveal its final chamber, where you are greeted by the Sheikah monk who has been guiding you through this whole DLC, Maz Koshia. But this is no ordinary encounter, as he reveals himself to be the final trial of this challenge, and you must overcome him in an epic showdown to complete it. This fight is easily one of my favorites in the entire series, as it takes the player on an epic multi-stage boss battle like none other. Throughout the fight, this monk will use a wide variety of different moves to overcome the player, like teleportation, cloning, and even growing to the size of a skyscraper practically. These constant changes keep pushing the fight to new limits, and this is why I value the boss over all others in this game. Even a properly equipped player will have a bit of struggle with this fight, and that's how a good finale boss battle should be. I mean, a lot better than a glorified game of target practice, at least. But after completing the boss battle, Link is finally given what was promised to him at the very beginning, his own divine beast, the Master Cycle Zero. I never thought that I would be driving a freaking motorcycle in a Zelda game anytime soon, but here we are, and it is epic. I know some people will complain that the motorcycle wasn't an appropriate fit for this game, and that it breaks the overall feel, but considering how far in the game you have to be to even get this thing, I didn't see a problem with it at all. Also, upon completing the DLC, you are finally given one last memory, which shows off the ceremony in which the champions were sworn in. It was definitely a neat little touch to wrap everything up, and who could forget about that heart-touching final scene? So when it comes down to it, I would have to say that I really enjoyed this final DLC for Breath of the Wild. It really brought out the best in the base game, by offering so many great challenges and charismatic cutscenes that significantly added to the overall experience. The only big complaint that I had with this DLC is the lack of cohesion in the middle section that I stated earlier, as I would have preferred more of a solid questline rather than a series of random tasks to complete. But still, it was amazing in just about every other manner, and this DLC still deserves a solid 9 out of 10 for me. But besides most of the major points that I've stated, there are still so many other small things that made it great as well, most notably from the soundtrack. The Champions Ballad song is easily one of my favorites in the entire game, and I love how it not only gets built upon throughout the DLC, but also how well its melody is integrated within the other pieces from this game, like the Shrine exterior theme and the hidden epilogue ending. Also, other standalone songs such as the Mos Koshia theme, Final Trial, and the music that played over the 4 champion cutscenes were just dynamite, and I highly suggest re-listening to them after watching this video. But with that said, 1 year after its release, I truly consider the Champions Ballad DLC to be an excellent love letter to the legacy of this legendary game. It's sad to think back that this epic adventure has run its course, but I am just glad to see that it went out in probably the highest note possible. Anyways, thank you for watching my retrospective on the Champions Ballad. I am proud to announce that this channel has finally hit 2,000 subscribers, and I just wanted to thank you all for your continuous support throughout this journey. If you could leave a like and subscribe to support the channel, that would help me out immensely. Also, thank you to my amazing patrons who help make all of this possible. If you want to support the channel and have your name featured at the end of all my future videos, please consider supporting, link below in the description. Anyways, thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.